Commissioner Bennick, Commissioner Chapman,
Here.
Commissioner Hoyler,
Here.
Commissioner Purvey,
Here.
Commissioner Smith, Vice Chair Summers,
Here.
Chair Blair.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have the current events report, please? Anything at this time?
Madam Chair, members of Commission, just an update on the Community Development Director recruitment. At this time, there wasn't a successful candidate chosen. The city manager has decided to look for an assistant city manager that will supervise over the Community Development Director position as well as the Economic Development position. So after that hire's taken place, they'll go back out and do the recruitment. At the moment, the interim Community Development Director, Mr. Chris Boyd, and myself will I'll be the long-range planning manager in this position. Also, though, good news, we did make 2 offers and get 2 hires for planning positions. So we'll have 2 new planners starting on the 21st of July.
Great.
And then as far as startup business, we've got the Dutch Brothers that have a conditional C of O that started June 20th, opened June 20th. So that's it at this time. Thank you.
Great. At this time, I'm going to call to the public anyone wishing to speak on any item that is not on the agenda tonight. And seeing none, I will close that. May I have a recommendation for the minutes of the last meeting, Commissioners?
Move to approve. Second.
And please vote at this time.
The motion carries with a vote of 5 ayes and 2 absent. Consideration and action on a renewal of a conditional use permit for a wireless communications facility at New Song United Methodist Church, located at 16301 West Bell Road.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Before I get into this presentation, I noticed there's quite a few people in the audience and it's most likely for the rezone. And I'd like to remind the audience to fill out a form and hand it to Deb before they can come up and speak, be called to speak. And for tonight, my first item is the AT&T wireless communications facility at New Song Methodist. This is an existing facility, and the past couple months we've been going through a couple of these that had 5-year conditions on them. We're about a third way through all of the ones that have that condition on it. This one is located on the southwest corner of Saraville and Bell Road. That's the overall site plan. A little bit closer in. This is the site plan, and what's in red is the leased area and the equipment within that. The leased area and the equipment footprint will not expand with this. There will be an additional panel inside, but will not be seen by anybody except the technician. This shows what the proposed cell tower will look like. It will basically raise 1 foot to 66 feet. Our current code allows it to go up to 67 feet. And this is, you'll notice, as shown in the previous one, we have these longer antenna for the 4G service. And these are just some views of the existing facility from Bell Road and Saraville Road. And as I always do, these are coverage maps showing what would happen if this cell tower was not there. This is showing the cell tower. and without it, and you'll notice the blue area is where service would be lacking. And as per our last meeting, the chair asked about the location of the nearest facility. And for this one would be at the facility at the stadium right here, about 1.5 miles away from this. And with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Summers, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Hoyler?
No questions.
Commissioner German?
No questions.
No questions.
I also have no questions. This does require a public hearing. And anyone, Deb?
David Stevens?
Good evening, Madam Chairman and panel members. I have a simple question, and it's a technical one. Can we expect any electronic interference from homes close to this facility? TV, cell phones of a different manufacturer, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If I may, I would like to ask the applicant to come up to answer that question. He's a little bit more technical savvy than I am.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners, and Mr. Stevens. To answer your question as best I can, I'm not a technician, but I will say that the facility has been in operation for 5 years, and neither I nor any of the operations staff at AT&T are aware of any complaints about interference to any residential electronics. Further, I'd like to add that the frequencies that these sites operate on are licensed federally by the FCC. And are confined to a frequency band within the wireless spectrum, the PCS spectrum. So it's a completely different frequency band than household electronics operate on, I guess is my point. Does that answer your question, Mr. Stevens?
Are they microwaves?
They are not.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sir,
Madam
can you
Chair.
state your name one more time?
I'm
for
sorry.
The
My
record?
name is Steve Olson. I'm with Bechtel Communications, representing AT&T. Address is 2075 West Pinnacle Peak Road in Phoenix.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioners, any other questions? May I ask for a motion at this time?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve. I move to approve the renewal of a conditional use permit for a wireless communications facility at New Song United Methodist Church and to adopt the staff findings as listed in the staff report.
Second.
Commissioners, please vote at this time.
The motion carries with a vote of 5 ayes and 2 absent. Item 3,
Thank you.
consideration and action on a recommendation to rezone property from rural residential to medium-density residential, and action on site plan approval for Mariposa Acres located at 15851 West Tierra Buena Lane.
Good evening once again, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. 2 months ago, you may remember, we brought this forward, and it was at the recommendation of the Commission that we hold another outreach meeting. So I'll be bringing this back just to refresh your memory. This is located on Reams Road, just about a half mile south of the Orchards, or Bell Road. A little bit closer site in there. And tonight's action is twofold. It's just showing you what the site will look like. But tonight's action is twofold. One is to rezone this to medium-density residential, half of this parcel, and the other is to approve the site plan for this parcel. There is an associated final plat, but that is going to be heard by council. Mariposa Acres has the structure. It is approximately 20,000 square feet. The white openings here are open to the sky for indoor activities or outdoor activities within the confines of the building. 2 access points off Tierra Buena Lane. I'd like to point out that the one to the left is a shared access, and it also is a fire turnaround towards the north of that. And parking for 9 vehicles. Based on Parking calculations in the code, this would require 8. This is providing 9, and it does not include the garage spaces where they would keep the van, where they would take residents to activities and to doctor's appointments and such. The elevations, it's southwestern, it kind of blends in with neighborhood types feel. Landscaping, desert materials, some grass in the background, and they went as far as to put pavers along the front for the drive. This is a little bit of a 3D view to show it this area, and as you know, Paradise Acres is this whole area in through here, and we're talking about this little area here. And this is showing it currently with the existing house to the south and the facility right here, just to give you a feel of perspective and the size of it. We did have another citizen review meeting in June 24th. We had several members attend, councilmen attended, and there were people for the project, there were people against the project, and there were a couple people on the fence. And I'm sure you'll hear from a few of them tonight. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Great. Is there living quarters? Is somebody on that living in there at all times? Is there a house connected or an apartment for the central person that's there all the time?
This facility is going to be staffed, and there is an upstairs living quarters. The whole entire floor downstairs are for the residents, but there's quarters upstairs, but there will be full-time staff.
But the quarters upstairs is not a living quarters, is that correct? It's just, is there actually going to be a homeowner that lives in that?
Let me call up the applicant to answer that question. Very good question.
Madam, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Gene Stumble representing King Overpass Partners. The second level is a small apartment for an on-site nurse that'll be living there in the evenings. The nurse will be working probably about 3 days a week at the hospital. She will be living quarters there to monitor all the prescriptions and that the residents are required to take, getting them prepared and put in the proper order and so forth.
So she actually lives there full time?
She will live there, yeah, works during the day, part-time, and lives there all the time. And there will be an on-site manager that lives in the two-bedroom apartment that is part of the complex.
Okay.
So there will be a manager that's there full-time as well as a nurse, and then the normal staff that helps them.
And there will be security are you going to have security at all here?
Security, the area will be fenced, and the doors are locked because the people that live in an assisted living, most of them are going to be in their 80s and probably 90s, late 70s. In the existing one over on Paradise now that is been in operation, they've had a couple of them that went over the fence and they were brought back. So the doors are locked so they can't get out on their own.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Summers, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question regarding the existing use on the site. I noticed that I don't know, there's one house or two houses. Are those, I guess the question I have is about the existing ownership, and are those houses rentals, or the people that own the property in the houses and they got an option, the developer has an option to buy? What's the
No,
status?
those two houses have been rental properties. The small house is presently rented to an elderly Spanish American, and her son lived there. He helps take care of her to pay the rent. They've been in that building, I believe, about 3 years now, might be close to 4. The other one, a lady conducted a Montessori child care facility. Because of the economics and so forth, she has closed that up, and that house is presently vacant. We are advertising for a tenant in that house. Both of them are rental properties.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hoyler.
Isn't there a church going in just to the north of this facility? How
Yes,
close
sir.
is this property to the church that's going in to the north of this project?
The churches are going to be located on Reams Road, right about in this area where I'm circling. About 1,000 feet from there.
And then the property in between where this facility would be, that stretch, I don't know, what is that, probably 5-10 acres right there? I'm
Yes,
guessing?
that is a rural residential. There is a home on there at this point.
Is that a home in the back there,
Yes, sir.
the white? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Chapman.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Purvey.
No question.
Okay. This does require an open meeting.
Yes, Charlotte Waddle.
My name is Charlotte Waddle, 15374 West Paradise Lane. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm here to, voice my opinion, and it's one opinion among many. If you had me to really say no on this project, I wouldn't say that. I think the one on Paradise Valley is an asset to this community, and this one sure will be an asset also. My concern is the church that you're talking about was supposed to be on the area with the houses. If I'm wrong on that, I'd like to know. Why I'm here is to actually say, aside from the church, the property that is left off of there, we are wanting it to be zoned as is, and I don't want to see it go as light or rather medium density. According to the medium density, that would include multi-unit housing. I don't think that we need additional apartments in this area. I'd rather see schools built there or some other public agency rather than go to some business. So, I'm here mainly just to state I have no real opposition against this other than I was understanding that in the public hearing that they were proposing this to face the Reams Road rather than face Terra Buena. So is that different from that meeting?
Bart, would you please?
The flyer I got showed that the proposed was to face Reams. That was the new proposed.
Okay, thank you.
I can answer that. I'm not sure of the flyer, but at the meeting and since the beginning, it was the property shown right in through here. And as per your other question, this will remain rural residential.
The sites won't be, those houses won't be removed, and that's where the church is going to be, no?
Oh, no, ma'am. The church will be located to the north, about 1,000 feet on this parcel.
And no other plans will be to turn this other property into medium density, as we say now, without later approval by the citizens.
There's no plans in at this point, but if there was to be any plans, it would be just like this, where we had citizen outreach public hearing and with the citizenry involved.
Okay.
It
Thank
is
you.
not facing Reams Road, though. Is that correct?
Sorry?
That didn't change. That it is not facing Reams Road.
No, ma'am. It is facing Tierra Buena and will be addressed off Tierra Buena.
Okay, thank you.
Did it move from one site to maybe deeper in the site?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I do have a couple additions to this. One, I'd like to know your absentee policy on commissioners. I noticed that we still have 2 commissioners that didn't show up at the last one. I just wondered how that's handled.
Actually, if you would like to leave your name and number, we'll have her call you and let you know.
And lastly, I just want to state, I know for a fact that this committee hearing is being watched. After the last appearance that I had here, I had several people, actually many, that walked up and said, hey, I saw you on this City of Surprise website channel, and that you were attending this meeting, you spoke up. So I want you to know that people are watching what you do and the effect that you have on our community. And you have a big effect. And sometimes it can be good, and sometimes it can be bad. I just want to ensure that what happens is good for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Poe.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Jean Poe. I live at 15199 West Paradise Lane. My husband Todd and I have lived in Paradise Acres for 15 plus years and have watched the tremendous growth and development in our area. Although the growth has sometimes impeded our small rural feel, we have accepted it as we have been assured by the past council members and by the city staff that the city was very supportive in preserving our 80-acre area. Our biggest concern with the rezone for the Mariposa Acres on the eastern portion of the parcel is that this would now open up the other properties to also be rezoned. If additional acreages are allowed to rezone to medium density, it would then turn the area into clusters of small multi-residential homes with the potential for rental area. In addition, the large number of homes would increase the traffic on an already busy road with students who walk to and from school. There has already been a developer looking into the area to buy a 10-acre parcel to redevelop into low density. With low density, they're wanting 40-plus homes. Could you imagine what this would be if it was a medium density and how many homes we would add across the street from the high school? As we mentioned in previous meetings, the ideal location would be on the west portion of the parcel. The landowner would be able to build assisted living facility, and there would be no appearance of spot zoning. This would also take care of the issues of not allowing homes on Reams Road frontage. The Maricopa County Assessor's Office has the address for this 5-acre parcel as Tierra Buena address, and the mailboxes are also located on Tierra Buena, allowing for the assisted living to be accessed from Tierra Buena. In addition, if the facility were located on the west portion, a 10-resident facility similar to the Moons facility would not require a rezone. All we ask is if it is the Commission's pleasure to approve the rezone on the eastern portion, we ask that an overlay be put in place so that only an assisted living facility could be built on that lot in the event that the owner decides to sell after the rezone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eugene Stumval.
Well, this has been going on for just about 2 years now. Started out differently, that the assisted living property, which is in question tonight on the 1.5 acres, has always been to be on that site, and that was arrived at with the discussions of the city staff and that would be the proper place for it. The property in the front originally was to go neighborhood commercial. Because of the meetings with the property owners about 1.5 years ago, it was pulled out and left as residential with the two homes on it. And that's what it is today. What will bring in the future, I'm not sure. The property around it, Joe and Carolyn to the north, Joe's health is not too good. I visited with him here the past 10 days. They're in support of the project, and they've also given me a letter indicating that they approved that property, the assisted living going in next to him. And the property owners to the east, there's 3 lots immediately to the east. There are some activities being put together on that I can't divulge. I've been asked to not say any more about it. And the other property going, there's 5 acres next to that, and then there's presently 8 lots that are on the market for residential homes, 1.25 acre lots, and both of those property owners have also indicated they are in favor of having this zone changed for an assisted living. The building will be, the building was designed with the city staff, and the cost of that building, about $2.5 million. It'll be a high-end facility. Rick and Kay Moan, who operate the present one down on Paradise on the corner, we have worked with them for 3 years now, and they are going to be a consultant to us as far as how the place is run, training the people, all of the operation. They will be involved so that it'll be a very pleasant facility for the neighbors. We're not here to jack neighbors around. The indication was to put this home up front. We were told that no residential, it was not the general need or want that the city had of having more residential immediately, next to Reams. So that's where it ended up. Any questions?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Commissioners, I'm going to open it back to, up to you. Any other questions? Commissioner Curry?
No questions.
Okay. Commissioner Summers?
I just have an observation, I guess, and I'm thinking that the existing assisted living facility was zoned and put in that area, and from what I'm hearing, it's not a problem to anybody. And this is it is a similar situation, although it's towards the Reams frontage. And from my perspective, I wouldn't consider increasing the density interior to this 80-acre site. That would make no sense at all, considering how it's being developed. But this property, isolated, is just like the first one. I can see no issue with that. And as long as this zone change is not affecting the Reams frontage of that, it's going to continue to have the same zoning, then it's just up, if there was a development proposed there, it would come back to the commission, public hearing, the whole thing. So I just wanted to say that was what my position was.
The one question I have is, so we're talking about essentially these 2 lots right here. The 2 houses that face, we'll call it Reams, possibly Tierra Buena, those 2 residences, these houses right here, right? So we're rezoning those to go into low to medium density houses. That whole lot, how many acres is that? 10, 5?
I can go back to here and it will illustrate better how that is. This is about 4 acres, and this portion over here, the medium density, is about 1.5 acres. And currently, this is all one parcel. It is being split. That's the final plat I was discussing about that will be going to City Council. and just this portion would be rezoned to medium-density residential.
The gentleman mentioned about other projects or something down the pipe that he couldn't divulge or anything like that. Is there anything that's in the pipeline that the city may know about that is something that could cause concern with this, about the whole rural residential area?
Down the pipeline, no, I have no information. There was somebody that came in that wanted to put in low density housing, which is about 5,000 square foot. And they were told because of the character of the area, the general plan, that they were not permitted to do that.
On that, I know we're just talking about these these two lots right here. Up on the north off of Paradise Lane, it looks like there's a cul-de-sac right there. We had a picture of it earlier. On the north part of the parking lot, or the entire site. Right there,
right
on the
here?
north side off of Paradise Lane.
Oh,
See it?
are you talking?
Down,
Yes.
down,
Oh,
to the right. Keep going,
oh.
right there.
Oh, sorry.
Is that a cul-de-sac for for something? 1 acre lots, 2 acre lots?
Yes, sir. These were split probably around 2006, 2007 for single 1 acre lots, and you can see there were one or two homes built since then.
Oh, okay. And then my final thing is, they did mention, from my recollection, that I know we're not here for that church, but that church, I thought there was some of those three houses up there were in play with that, some way, shape, or form.
On this parcel here, if I may, a lot of people confuse the church with the corner parcel, and
Right.
it is not the corner parcel.
It's further
It's
west.
further, yes.
Yeah. And
Well, it's further south. The church is
Right.
along Reams, the
Okay.
second property in, right in through here.
All right. And the property owners of that back lot gave them temporary use of that for parking if they needed it.
That's
At
right.
the time when that came through, it was about 2 years ago, I believe, they did, yes.
All right.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes, I'd like to just comment that I think the sensitivity toward the rural residential is something I think that we can all appreciate. And I think that we'll have to take each one of these projects that come to us and be sensitive to this area, which is a very unique area. So I just want to make that comment. I'm sorry, I would just, I'll get closer to the mic. Can you hear me now? I've had trouble sitting out in the audience and hearing as well. I just want to make a comment that we are sensitive toward the rural residential zoning that currently exists. And that each project that comes in to us with a proposal, that we're going to have that and keep that in mind. We think it's a very unique area, and we'd like to do our best to preserve it. Or I would. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions? May I have a recommendation, please?
I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council rezoning of the property from rural residential to medium density residential. And is it two parts? And I also move to approve the site plan for Mariposa Acres subject conditions A and B and adopt the findings as presented in the staff report. I'm going to ask a question of staff because I'm reading this and it is talking about rezoning the property. It's rezoning part of the property. Am I correct on that?
This is in conjunction with with the final plat. And if the final plat is not approved by, and what the condition is the final plat is not approved, and the rezone or the site plan would not be approved.
Okay, let me make sure.
But there's only one part of this parcel that is in this, and that is what he's asking tonight.
Yes, ma'am. And yes, sir, that's just that
Okay.
one.
I wasn't
parcel
clear
being
in
rezoned.
reading the recommendation that that's what we're doing, but you're saying that's what it is. It's only one part of the site changes zoning to the medium density residential.
Not the whole parcel, just the part,
Yes, sir. The eastern 1.5 acres.
Thank you.
as long as we make that, no.
That was it. Did we have a second? Or is it?
I second.
Commissioners, please vote at this time.
The motion carries with a vote of 4 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent. Item number 4, presentation and discussion regarding the city's draft access management plan.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, I'd like to go ahead and start discussing the draft access management plan, and this is just a discussion. I will be coming back to discuss anything, any further details that you might have in the future, but also like to emphasize that this is a general access management plan that's a blanket for the city in general principles. It's not a site-specific, like a corridor access management plan or an area access management plan. This is just general principles that would be used in the general practice for the city. For the presentation, I'll give a general overview of what is access management. I'll go ahead and discuss the benefits and consequences, discuss also access management in practice, and then elements of an access management program. In general, how do we control access? Usually, access is only controlled in 4 different ways. It's the curb cuts or the driveways. There's also median access control, traffic signals, traffic signs, and interchanges. And so that's kind of how access is really controlled. Usually, just from a general standpoint, it's just the normal curb cuts that you see to a roadway, and then it progresses all the way up to an interchange level. There's really a formal way of discussing access management. It gets really technical. However, the informal way is just the placement of intersections. How do you get onto the road? How do you get onto your property? And then the most general way of discussing why you have access management is by the land use and also the type of facility of roadway network that we have. If you notice on this graph here, one side is how do you increase mobility? How do you get things in and out? How do you move traffic? How do you move people? How do you move freight? And then the other one is how do you increase access? How do you get people to their property and to the places they want? If you just want to move them, you build a freeway. If you want to be able to get people to properties, you create local roads, hence your homes. And this is just a progressive ladder. And so if you think of the highways as being the legs of a ladder, and then your local streets as being the runs, and everything else being kind of in between, that's kind of a general practice for access management. So for property owners have the basic right to access their property. We're not allowed to landlock anybody. You can't tell somebody, sorry, you can't get to your property. So from the federal and the state level and from local practices, we have to allow people to get to their property and provide access to them. However, in general, they're not allowed to dictate exactly what type of access or where that access is located. Those are dictated by federal, state, and local regulations for safety and standards and things like that. So who benefits from access management? Well, pedestrians, bicyclists, cyclists, motorists, property owners, everybody benefits in general from access management. And the reason being is it improves safety, it preserves right and flow, it makes things efficient, and it also helps with the aesthetics. Hence things like it combines with land uses. So if you want all the buildings up on the front edge where you have pedestrian access so they can walk to facilities, or is it industrial and you move everything back and you hide it with the view shed, so that way you don't have conflicts with industrial equipment and things like that. And so access management really takes a look and is only a portion of what you do. It's just a tool. Access management actually comes into play in two different places. If you take a look at this life cycle, access management can be applied just before land use changes. And so, that's an administrative mean. It's planning and zoning, the administrative development director or administrative person for the city. It could be the city council, but those are kind of when the property is raw or that's being changed. The administrative portion comes in there. As you move forward and the things are developed, roadways are put in, businesses are put in, and sometimes you end up with conflicts, traffic accidents, safety issues. Access management can be applied to the actual roadway or to the access points to create new physical barriers or new changes in design to be able to help make things safer, and that's at the top. And then, of course, as we know, as redevelopment occurs, things happen, you remove land uses, and then you can move through the cycle once again. One of the things that have been shown over time, and this is really important, as you add more access points along a mile stretch of a corridor or a roadway, and then you increase speed or you end up cutting up that road more, the access increases, but the rate of accidents also increase. So the more points you add to a major arterial, the more accidents you're going to get in general. Here's just a real quick graphic for you to take a look at. This is in the plan. We put this in there for a visual effect. If you take a look at a T intersection or a four-way cross intersection or a four-way cross intersection that limits the lefts in or lefts out, you get different rates of accidents, you get different conflict points. So access management can also be changed up in the way you access certain intersections to limit the severity of accidents or the type of accidents that may occur. So what's the consequences of poor access management? The consequences can really be summed up in either safety or, and from an economic standpoint, really just poor access to either your homes or to being able to get to businesses. And it can also just be from the standpoint of environmental, in the sense you're not able to move, you get a lot of staleness, you get vehicles who are stopping and not being able to move and flow, and so you get some environmental impacts issues there. So how do you improve these consequences? Well, there's a concept out there called uncluttering or pruning. That means you go through a corridor and you start choosing which access points make sense, which ones don't, how can you combine them. There's also things that you can do in the sense of coming in with enforcement issues. So if it's really just an enforcement issue, you can combine access management with some enforcement issues with police officers. Or you can do things like redesign. You can take a full intersection and you can put a new design in there to try to help avoid those conflicts. Here's two really good examples of something here in the city. Both of these happen to be Litchfield, and just different parts of Litchfield. Up to the north by where our complex is, just to the east of here, you'll see that we have the medians with the landscaping. It helps limit the amount of left turns you can do. If you try to run over that with your car, you better have a pretty good sized vehicle, otherwise you're going to do some damage to some tires or something like that. However, when you go further down south along Litchfield, you have areas that just have painting medians. And so for you to make a left turn and go over the double stripe lines, you can do that really easily. However, if a police officer were to catch you doing an illegal U-turn, you could get a ticket. And so that's kind of two different versions of some access treatment. However, one's more of a physical structure and the other one would have to be law-abiding citizen or enforcement to help make that continue to work. Again, here's a median redesign. These are kind of just general practices that are accepted out in the state and federal level, as well as some local facilities. As you can see, some designs allow full accesses at every quarter mile. Some limit the full access points to half miles or to full miles, and so you can get a thing in that blocks a full median, so you can't do left outs. You can just do right in, right outs. This is the important thing now. This is a tool for you to use. What methods are used? We use permits and corridor planning. You can do things like medians or corner clearances, cross-access, frontage roads. All these come into play when you take a look at it. Staff will take a look at it and give a professional opinion, could recommend something to planning and zoning. But if you're sitting up there and you kind of take a look and you kind of go, hey, I'm really concerned that this is going to have an impact, you can also ask the developer or staff to take a look at any one of these things, and we can evaluate that against the corridor or the access to the property. Here's a good graphic. Again, this is also in our plan. One of the things that we've noticed over time is our access points happen to be a lot closer to the intersection, and we haven't designed them to be further back. What happens then is, as vehicles go to a left turn bay, they end up backing up into the oncoming traffic. That oncoming traffic can't move forward because they're waiting for the vehicle to make a left turn, and then all of a sudden the vehicles all back up and no one can get out of the access point. And so when you're taking a look at that, you really need to really design an access point based off of speed, distance, as well as other intersection treatments that we have in place. If we don't plan for access, what ends up happening is you have an uncontrolled access over time. You end up curb cut, and sometimes they're not lined up correctly. But what ends up happening is you have a corridor, much like what happened with Grand Avenue, is you were supposed to have a state highway, and now we have a collector street because everybody has a curb cut and you can't really move the traffic forward. However, everybody can get anywhere along that corridor. You can access every single business almost per driveway. What access management actually does is allows the metering of access points, so that way you know about every quarter mile you can turn in, and then you can use internal circulation to get to the places that you want, and it helps create a free flow for those larger facilities. Traffic impact analysis or traffic study areas. I'm just going to go ahead really quick and hit these. And the reason it's important is when you take a look at a site, much like what you did today when you did the rezone, it was really neat to see the council take a look at it. You guys were looking at a site specific on that back lot, but then we had some questions and you guys zoomed out and you took a look at Reams Road, and then you also took a look at, in general, what's happening. And that's all access management. That's exactly what you need to be doing and thinking. Sometimes if you zoom in too close, it looks good, but then when you look out further, that's when you start seeing the conflicts. One of the other things is also depending on the type of development that's going in. We're currently taking a look and hoping that ADOT makes a decision with the feds on Bell and Grand. Well, that project is such a large project that if you were just to look at that one intersection, you would miss a lot of impacts. And so the larger the project, the more dollars are spent, the larger the regional effect, the larger scope that you need to take a look at and really make sure that that one project isn't going to really affect everything else downstream. And so those are the general principles that are found inside the plan. It's currently a draft plan. We've made a couple administrative changes already that we're going to go ahead and forward over to you based off of some engineering discussions that we've been having. We're also hoping to make further changes as appropriate, because we're trying to make this just as one tool that will work with in combination with like the Complete Streets multimodal plan, as well as the engineering design standards at which they're updating. And so this in general isn't the fix-all. It's just going to be able to be used in general for good practice in the future. And I'll be happy to stand and answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Hoyler. Commissioner Chapman?
Yes, I'd like to ask, in looking from 303 going north toward Wickenburg, the way that we've designed it from, let's say, Bell Avenue to the 303, is it stop and go traffic pretty much all the way through there because of the access points. The question is, as we plan in the future, are we going to have stop and go traffic every quarter mile or half mile all the way to Wickenburg? Or are we going to have frontage roads? Do you have a plan yet, or is it in the stages?
Well, this is the general principles that we would have. And if you take a look, some of the things that we're suggesting is that you keep the miles at 1 mile intervals or wider for signals, that you don't allow full access in the sense of full left outs, right ins, right outs, unless they're at least a half mile apart from each other. And then you limit some of the things like right ins, right out, dependent on as necessity. And that we encourage access management for frontage roads, for cross-access easements, so that way most of the slower traffic can circulate internally. Now, for the areas that already have problems, there's things that we can do in principle in the sense of taking a look and developing a more corridor-specific and maybe putting in redesign of intersections or laying down raised medians or other treatments. But those would need a corridor-specific plan or a more in-depth look to make sure that those are appropriate. But yes, in general, hopefully this plan in correlation with other plans that are coming down the pipeline will avoid future problems.
Yeah, just to follow up a little bit, we have individual developers come in with plans for a certain specific area or development. In there, if you have a plan, a need for, let's say, a frontage road that may go through a corridor for several miles, are we going to have such a plan that the commission can look at the project and the developer when they bring in their proposals to know that that little piece or section for a frontage road either is or is not included in their particular plan based upon a more general plan for the corridors?
Yes, and what you're describing there is actually part of our road network reevaluation, the gap study that we're planning on trying to do, and a major thoroughfare plan. So that way, when we take a look at some of these major facilities, we can start planning for some of these frontage roads or some of the other access points that need to be addressed. In this access management plan, no, that won't be found. But in other plans that are coming down, yes. Also, engineering's also taking a look at some of their other plans that they're trying to update, and so we're trying to make sure everything speaks to one another and that they all kind of work with the general plan as well as the future site-specific plans for like the village plan, which was identified inside the general plan.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Bergen.
No questions.
Commissioner Summers.
No questions.
Okay. Commissioner O'Hara.
In the back of it, again, it talks about the bikes and pedestrian pathways. And every time I see it, you're going to hear from me. It talks about the arterial roadways making bike-specific areas. In the earlier plan, it talks about major arterials and minor arterials and collector roads. Mm-hmm. Are there any intentions of cutting that and only using minor arterials, or will major arterials be used as well for commuting?
What we're really trying to do is allow, where appropriate, those facilities to house those components. And that's going to be addressed more in the complete streets plan as well as the multimodal plan, or another name for that is the bicycle pedestrian plan. But what we're hoping to do is be able to make the corridors function correctly so the appropriate facility, depending on the speed and the safety, can be put down. So in essence, the only place I wouldn't ever recommend a bicycle is on a freeway or interstate. I know here in Arizona, they do allow them on some highways and some interstates, and that's fine. However, from a city standpoint, where appropriate, as long as there's not too many curb cuts or conflict points, then at that point in time we would have to reevaluate that. But currently in the standards that engineering has, as well as us, we haven't come to that conclusion yet, and so I can't speak to that and say yes for sure we're going to allow them on major arterials. Currently in the standards, they're allowed on minor arterials and collectors, and we're going to take a look at the evaluation a little bit closer here in the near future.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. At this time, for future agenda items, did you need something?
No, I was just, no, it doesn't need to be right now. I just want to give you something, so.
Okay. For future agenda items, do we have a workshop scheduled for September?
Not yet. The topic would be open for discussion.
Okay. Does anyone have a suggestion for the September workshop? It's not going to be bicycles. So if you have any suggestions, please make sure that you email them and that we can get one on by September. Okay? Commissioners, anything else you'd like to add? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
I was going